Hi there, Shanna Kramer here. This is Bringing Home the Tree, an acrylic painting with lights. We're starting off here with a 10 by 20 canvas, some black and some white acrylic paint. We're just mixing them together to get a nice light gray and painting it on in a nice choppy style so that we get some off in the distance hazy clouds and then some faded snow on the bottom. We'll add a slight vignette to the outside so it's a little bit darker and helps anchor the painting. Darken up that horizon line as well as the shadow area under the truck. Go ahead and blend that all in, and then we will make sure we have the entire canvas covered with paint. Next, adding into the horizon line, we'll just be adding our background trees. These are a slightly darker gray than our background color. Add in a couple of tree trunks and then tap in your tree branches. With all of those branches on, go ahead and anchor them to the ground with a nice shadow. We'll do the same thing on both sides. These trees don't need any detail. They're just background trees. We don't want them to be too attention-getting, so just keep them nice and muted and simple. Anchor them to the ground again. Take a break, sketch your truck. Then we'll start color blocking the truck with red. By color blocking, we will simply be coloring the truck red. Everything that the base color needs to be red. We're not worried about highlights, shadows, variations in color. We're simply adding the background color. We'll give this layer a minute to dry, and then we'll come back and do our details. While that's drying, we can add our second layer of trees. These are still background trees, so they'll still be gray, but it's a darker shade of gray. Same technique, add your tree trunks, add your branches, and then anchor them with a shadow. While that's drying, we'll come back into our truck, add our shadows, add a little bit of black to your red, put it on your truck and blend it while it's wet. When we add our highlights, we'll just pick up some white paint and drop it where we want it and leave it alone. Next, we'll work on the wood rails of the back of the truck. And this is just some brown paint, only a background color again. We're color blocking just like we did with the truck. We'll add our brown and then we'll let that dry and come back and do a second layer. While the wood color is drying, we'll work on the wheels. Add a medium gray for the center of the wheels, a slightly darker gray for the very center of the wheels, and then some white highlights. After that, move on to the black of the tires. Do this on both wheels. While we're working on these wheels, then the wood should be dry. We'll come back and add the shading of the wood, add a little touch of black to your brown paint, and add in a few shadows just so you can identify the boards. We'll also add some highlights. Again, that's just going to be a little white with your brown. Moving on to the bumpers, the other chrome, fill those in with gray, slightly darker gray for shadow, and a couple of dots of white for the highlights. When you're adding the shadow to the truck, at this point our paint is pretty dry, so we'll be adding quite a bit of new paint just so we can take advantage of the wet and wet blending. Add as much paint as you need to get the blend that you're after, and then just touch up as necessary. After this, we'll work on the tree. I've got a nice mix of yellow and blue. I'm just sketching out the tree shape in the back of the truck, and then just start dotting in the different color. One of the benefits of using yellow and blue and white to make your green is you have 3 different colors to work with for your color variations. You can have highlights on one side, you can have shadows on another side. For example, on this tree, we'll be dropping in some white, making it look like we have a little bit of snow on the top of the tree. And then we'll switch over to a more pure blue to add in our shadows, which will be right around the truck and on the shadow side of the tree, the bottom side of the tree. Right, and then we'll move on to our background trees one more time. We're just taking that small brush, some white paint, and adding in some snow to the branches. Just tap that snow right onto the branches, and then scribble on a little bit of snow highlights, just right down on those little hills. And once we have our final details done here with our trees and our snow, we'll let this dry for a minute before moving on to adding our lights. We have a string of fairy lights. Do make sure they work before you try to use them. And then we have a push pin. These are the main starter points. So unstring your lights and turn them on. Count your lights. We have 20. which means we're going to want to make 20 holes in the tree. Take your push pin and get started. 1920. All right, so these holes are not big enough to put your lights through, so flip it over, grab a nail or another tool that you can poke larger holes with, and repoke those holes. Make sure they're big enough to fit your lights through, and go ahead and try pushing your light through. If it just barely fits, that's exactly the right size. The light should come through to the front side of the canvas, and then we will grab our tape and get to work. One at a time, we'll put the light through the hole and then tape it down. As you're working, you want to be careful to not kink the wire, because that can cause your whole string of lights to go out, and that wouldn't be good. One at a time, tape them down, and then make sure you do tape the whole works down at the end. We'll do another second layer of tape around the whole thing just to keep it intact. And then let's flip it over for the reveal. Isn't that nice? Let's shut out the room lights. Oh, look at that. Our beautiful new glowing red truck. Isn't that beautiful? If you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified. If you're watching this on Patreon, that means you have access to downloads to our traceables, to our templates, to all of the supply lists and everything you need. Thanks for watching. See you next time.